Hey everybody, and welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and we have a really interesting and very cheap MICRO-ATX case to look at today, and surprisingly it actually comes from LIAN. This is the brand new LIAN DAN cases A3 MICRO-ATX. So we're used to DAN cases focusing on mini-ITX, and it has some great designs out there. This though focuses on micro-ATX, so you're getting a few more ports in terms of memory and PCI Express and that kind of stuff, probably more M.2 ports as well. But if you just need a slightly bigger PC and you don't really fancy building a mini-ITX PC, don't know why you would, because this channel is mainly focusing on mini-ITX, but is what it is. This case is not just really interesting in terms of its water cooling and air cooling support. You can fit massive coolers in here, as well as custom water cooling hardware. The most interesting thing is the price, because at 70 bucks, this thing is super affordable, and I really like the design as well. You get lots of premium features, you get a Type-C port on the front panel, a great, really interesting design, and a wraparound mesh with a side panel option as well. There's no vertical GPU mount out of the box, but you can buy an additional kit for around 50 bucks. So for around $120, you can actually have this case with a vertical GPU mount as well, and we're going to be looking at all the different options as well in the unboxing that we've got today. So we'll be doing a full walk around. We're doing a system build and some cooling tests using some high-end hardware, and coming to some conclusions at the end. So I want to thank LIAN for sending this case over today, and I really love the design already, and I love the price even more, because if you're going for a budget system and you don't really want something enormous that's going to take up a huge amount of space, perhaps you just want to take it to college or university or something, or you just fancy something that doesn't take up a huge amount of space on your desk, this thing could be a real worthwhile option for you. And I love the mesh design. It means whether your GPU is horizontal or vertical, it should offer excellent cooling, as it will for custom liquid cooling and air cooling as well. So let's crack on with the unboxing and the review. Okay, so here we are with the DAN Cases A3 MICRO-ATX, and we're just going to do a quick unboxing, and then we're going to have a walk around and see what kind of cooling and radiators that we can fit. So we've got a few radiators here, a nice selection of slim models and standard size models, 280mm, 360 and 240. So we're going to take a look at this thing and see what we can actually fit inside. So there's 165mm of CPU clearance as well. So whether you're air cooling or water cooling this thing, it has the credentials to match for sure the system that you're going to be putting inside. So we're just going to get rid of the cardboard box. So it's a pretty minimal setup. So we've got the case with an accessory box inside. The actual retail samples may differ to this one, because this one's obviously arrived way before the NDA at the end of May, and I'm reviewing it at the kind of beginning of May as well. So it's a pretty nice size. So what I will do is get a Fractal Design Terra down off my YouTube background wall over here, and we can just check out the size difference down there. So it is a pretty big case. As you can see, the Terra is obviously a very small mini-ITX case, and that's just something that you'll need to bear in mind. And the sunny side up design, Meshlicious, obviously comes out a little bit further in terms of height, probably similar otherwise to the Fractal. So it's not a small case for sure, but you do get the extra cooling prowess with it in terms of the CPU cooler height. Obviously the Fractal Terra limited very much so in terms of CPU cooler size, whereas this thing isn't. You can fit a massive CPU cooler in there, or indeed a large 360mm all-in-one liquid cooler. So let's get rid of the Fractal for a moment. So we're done with that comparison, and we'll move back to the A3 MICRO-ATX. So the first thing I'm going to do is pop off the panels. Now, something I've already noticed with this thing is that these panels, I don't know if you can hear that, that's basically these metal flanges down here. If I just flip this panel up, it's these metal flanges wobbling around in their little notches down here, and that could potentially lead to vibration issues. So it's an easy fix, because what you can do is just kind of put some duct tape around this thing here, just so it slots in and doesn't vibrate. But obviously with the price tag, things have to kind of be compromised in some places. And while I love the tool-free design, because check out how quick and easy it is to replace this panel, done. you kind of don't want that, because with fans and radiators and stuff in there, there will be a bit of vibration, and that is where you get those really annoying kind of metal vibration sounds. So does it at the front as well a little bit, but mainly at the rear. And you can just you can hear if I just bang it around, there's lots of metal kind of clunking around. So yeah, not so much on this side though. If I just remove this panel, it's probably because this panel is actually pressed up against lots of these components here that we'll look at in a moment. So yeah, it's kind of a tricky one. So yeah, that side not really having that many issues. But definitely on this side, it's like if you remove that panel, then basically the case sounds fine. So it's just this this bottom section here. So the first thing I would do is just kind of wrap some duct tape around there and just see what happens with the vibrations. So what I'm going to do now is just whip out the glass panel and we'll take a look at that. Okay, so we're back and we've got the glass panel just over here, and I've just been checking the pricing, and the glass panel is actually really affordable. So it's just 13 bucks for the replacement glass panel that we have here, and it'll be interesting to see what actually happens to the vibration as well, whether this thing is fitting a little bit better with this case. So the vertical GPU mount though is 50 bucks, so you'll get a vertical GPU mount. Not entirely sure if it actually includes a riser cable. I'll have to confirm that, but as far as I can see, if you can see here, the vertical GPU kit, $49, but it doesn't look like there is a riser cable that you will obviously need. So I will, actually there's a manual here. I'll find out and see what happens with the online manual for the GPU kit, because I've turned everything off now just because otherwise I'll get buzzing and stuff in the video. But I will drop onto the screen whether or not the vertical GPU mount kit actually includes a riser cable. So let's get the standard mesh panel off, and we're going to fit this glass panel here. So we should probably talk about what we're actually looking at while we open that. So obviously if you've got the glass panel there, you might not want to have the side mount for radiators, but obviously they've got a pretty hefty water cooling support in this case, with up to a 360mm radiator in the side, or three 120mm fans, or 140mm options as well. But you do have to move the power supply box, and the power supply mount is very adaptable as well. You can move it around in all sorts of locations in the front of the case. So so what I'm going to do now is just drop this thing in and see how it fits. There we go. Yeah, see, this fits much better than the mesh side panel. So I don't know whether there was just a bit of an issue with manufacturing or something on that panel, but this fits a whole lot better. Like, there's no vibration noise or anything on there, and yeah, it looks pretty sweet with that. I think whether you have an air-cooled PC or liquid cooling, the glass panel does look really awesome. Obviously, if you're going to have your GPU mounted on this on its side, the mesh panel is going to offer much better cooling. But I kind of like the fact that you get an option to do this, and with what, 13-14 bucks, maybe 20 including postage or something, it's a pretty good deal, I think, if you're more concerned about aesthetics. So we're going to remove the glass panel now and have a look inside the case in just a moment, but we're just going to flip it up and have a look at the front panel. So it can't seem to, oh yeah, that does come off. I'll get that off in a second because we will look at the front panel first. So front panel, obviously the usual stuff: power button, audio jacks, USB 3 ports, and a Type-C USB port as well, and that's full fat because we get the proper connector inside here, I hope. Where are we going? Yeah, so I was kind of worried there because I only saw a USB 3 header, and I thought we were going to be dealing with a cutback Type-C port, but you get the full Type-C port, so you'll need one of those Type-C headers on your motherboard if you want to use this, and thankfully I think pretty much most motherboards have those now. So we are just going to flip this around and see what happens when we remove this front panel, if that's fairly easy to do, which it is. So no filter down here, but we do get a large pull-off filter on the bottom, so that's probably where most of your airflow is going to come in. And obviously the rest of the chassis is mesh anyway, so the chassis kind of does its own thing when it comes to stopping dust ingress and that kind of thing. So that's the accessory box. So that's pretty much the only thing that we'll need to mention in terms of accessories, and it's pretty basic. You just get some cable ties, screws, and that kind of stuff. So this is the power supply cage here. So what you can actually do, I believe, is move this up and down, depending on whether you want to fit more radiators in the roof or not. And I believe there was a side option. I'm just going to go and have a look at the various options on this thing right now. And pretty sure there was a PSU side mount mode, if I am not mistaken. Let me see. PSU front mode. Yeah, so PSU side mode we have here. So yeah, so basically the power supply end will be facing you in front of the case. So the benefits of that are that you get additional fan mounts at the top. You can basically raising the power supply out of the way means that you get room for massive graphics cards and more of an emphasis on cooling at the bottom of the case as well. So one of the main perks of this case, I'm just going to replace that front panel quickly, which is very easy to do, as you can see. One of the main perks of this case, despite being relatively compact, is that you can fit 4-slot graphics cards in here. So we're going to crack open the monstrous Palette GameRock RTX 4090 in a minute when we build the system, and just see how that looks in there. But that is one of the perks of this case. You can't really do that with most mini-ITX cases, is to house a massive graphics card. But obviously, if you don't want to go liquid cooling, then getting a bigger graphics card is going to mean a bigger cooler, which is going to mean it's going to be quieter as well. So let's have a look at the rear of the case. Nice LIAN logo down there, and we can obviously got these captive thumb screws, which allows us to remove the top panel as well. So we're going to put that to one side, and we'll also get rid of this side panel, which pops off. And here we can see with a single 140mm mount there, which is adjustable. They could have probably squeezed 140 in there, I think, but you know, why do you need it on a fairly compact case like this? So the vertical GPU mount seems to just kind of sit in front of the existing mount, because this whole kind of contraption here is not removable. That you've just got a cover down here, but I'm guessing that's maybe where the GPU mounts sit for the vertical kit. Now, the power supply cable is down here, so thankfully LIAN hasn't done a Corsair with its recent mini-ITX case and routed the cable on the outside of the PC. It is actually neatly routed on the inside, just down there. So wherever your power supply is, there's an extension cable just down here that you can plug into it, and then it just runs down to the back of the case as normal. So the roof section, as we can see, we have a radiator or fan mount up here, but it is not removable. So I would have probably liked to have seen a removable mount in the top. I guess that would have just added a bit more to the machining costs, just because it's a small system. Yeah, it's 26 litres. It's not small by small form factor standards, but it's still relatively compact. So I would have liked to have seen a removable radiator mount in there, just because it makes installing your fans and radiators that much easier. So what I would do now is just go and grab my screwdriver, and we can remove this radiator support, and we can look at all the different installation options. So here we are with the radiator mount removed, and we've got a lot more room to play with in here. Something else I thought I should mention is that it's mostly rivet construction here. So I might have liked to have seen a way to remove some of these panels, but to be honest, you're probably not going to be customizing this case, and there's very few people who probably would. But sometimes it's just nicer if you want to do a bit of spray painting, or just remove a few sections to make your life a bit easier when you're building like a high-end water-cooled PC or something like that. So rivet construction, and then if we have a look on the inside, we've got a hard disk mount down here, which can also house 2.5-inch SSDs. But it's nice to see there's at least one 3.5-inch hard disk mount in here, and then obviously over the far side, over there, we can see we've got a couple more 2.5-inch mounts for SSDs as well. So the main reason I wanted to have a look inside is the power supply mount, so we can actually have a look at what you're able to do with this thing. So I'm just going to quickly whip off some of the screws that hold this thing in place, and then hopefully we can take a look and see what's actually going on with it. So I'm trying to actually remove this thing at the moment. I can't see for the life of me how you actually do that. Does it just lift up? Yeah, there we go. So 2 screws and then you just kind of lift it up. So this thing can move up and down depending on where you want it. So we can, if we just slot it into the bottommost slot down here. So what that does is open up the top section, gives you space for radiators in the roof, and just a little bit less space for graphics cards down here. So I'm kind of thinking that most graphics cards will actually set, yeah, no, they won't actually, just spotted that. It when in the lowest mount down here, it does actually, I think it's just fallen out of that lower slot. I'm just gonna make sure it's wedged in there nice and tight. So yeah, as you can see, there's basically, if your graphics card is longer than that, it will start to foul this point down here. So if you want maximum space in the roof and you want to drop the power supply mount down to here, I'm just going to have a quick look on my phone and see what the clearance is with the power supply in the lower mount. So up to 324 millimeters between end to end in there. Now, if you move the power supply up a notch, it's pretty much the same, albeit you do gain a centimeter because this thing down here is angled. So you gain a centimeter, so you can still have some potentially a radiator with fans in the roof. We're going to check out the clearances in a minute. If you have the power supply mount on the second slot, which is basically there. So that reduces the clearance up here for fans and radiators, but you do get a little bit of extra clearance for graphics cards down there. And then finally, if you raise the power supply up to its highest level, which I think is where it was at the start, this whole section down here becomes available for graphics cards, and you get a massive 415 millimeters of clearance. So the other location that you can install the power supply is over on the far side. So I'm just going to remove it completely, and then hopefully we can slot it back in. But it looks like you might need to remove some of the mounts for the SSDs on here, or maybe not. Yeah, I think we do. So installing the power supply on the side, you do need to remove the 2.5-inch cage or tray, whatever you want to call it. So just got rid of that. Pretty easy to remove, and then the power supply cage can hopefully just slot in. A little bit easier said than done. And it looks like there are different mounts for this thing here as well. So I'm just trying to slot this thing. It's even easier said than done on camera. So, oh, I see. You kind of have to put it in from the back like so. So yeah, you definitely need to remove it. So that's the, yeah, so it doesn't quite go up to slot in at the top mount, so it has to go in slightly shorter. So the other mount that I thought might have been for the power supply is actually for the 2.5-inch SSD mount. So yeah, that's another way of doing it if you want your power supply mounted like so. And there are other reasons why you might obviously want to do this. You might want to have a big radiator sat here in the side panel, and having the power supply cage over that side, as you can see, gives you all that clearance there. So that's easy enough room if I get my radiators and start having a look at these things. If you want to fit a 360mm radiator in the side like that, you can see that there's easily enough room for a single row of fans between the power supply and the radiators. So all looking pretty good in here. And if you wanted to do a combo, let's just see if we can fit another radiator in the roof. So we know that that radiator fits there. So if we wanted to do this and put one in the roof, can we fit some fans between that? I don't think we're going to fit standard height fans. We could use a slim radiator in the roof, of course, and then we would be able to. So plenty of options here if it comes to mounting multiple radiators. And what I'm just going to see is if we can actually move this power supply mount down and actually get a bit more clearance here. So it looks like we can. So now obviously that's going to impact on your graphics card choice, but if you're gunning for multiple radiators, I'm guessing you're probably going to liquid cool your graphics card as well, or maybe have it in the side panel. And what this means here is that we can easily fit that radiator in there, and then we've got loads more clearance up the top and easily enough for multiple fans. So I like the power supply mount because invariably it is the power supply that ruins your day when it comes to water cooling small PCs. It's why I'm pretty much in, well, lots and lots of mods that I've done on mini-ITX cases, they have been to, the primary mod has been to move the power supply mount, because you move that out of the way, stick it against the side of the case or something, it clears out a whole load of extra space in the PC. And that's what this PC is kind of doing. And it's nice that someone's actually thought about moving the power supply from the front of the case, or wherever it is in this kind of case, to the side as well. So this is kind of the typical location for like the NR200P. That's generally where it is. Obviously a much smaller case, but it's nice that you can just pull out the power supply and then come around the front and just slot it in again. And yeah, I'm kind of making a mess of things here, but you get the idea. You just kind of pop it around and there you go. And it's super easy to do as well, because a lot of these things, when you dismount the power supply, you have to dismantle half the case as well. This takes 2 seconds, which is really, really awesome. So that's pretty much it from the inside. Loads of water cooling potential. There's extra radiator mounts down here as well. So you can even have a 360mm radiator in the bottom of the case, have your graphics card on top, especially if it's water cooled. You can then have another 360mm radiator here if you put the power supply over the far side, like so, and then another radiator in the top, and you've got plenty of clearance up here as well. So easy way of fitting 3 large radiators into this case. So super, super interested to see what those of you out there actually come up with this thing. And obviously you can use slim radiators as well to give yourself a bit of extra room. So we have, sorry about the bang, we've got a slim over here. We're just going to grab that one. So obviously this one you can fit in the base if you wanted to, pretty easily underneath your graphics card, and just to shave a couple of centimeters if you want to install a slim radiator in the bottom, maybe with some slim fans as well. Got a slim fan group test out there right now as well. So 140mm radiator sizes. Doesn't look like it's possible in the side, but they are possible, sorry, in the base of the case, but they are possible in the roof. So here's a 280mm radiator. Now, is that possible in the roof? Yes, it is. So you have to kind of mount it in the front of the case, because the power supply cable kind of fouls it over here, but it is possible to fit a 280mm in the roof if that's what you want to go for. And obviously in the side we do have space for it as well, because we've got some 140mm fan mounts down here as well. So a very, very flexible case, lots of options, but mainly due to the fact that you can move the power supply around up and down to the front of the case, to the side of the case where it is at the moment, and some really awesome options there. Okay, so here we are with the partially built system, because I've just found something really pretty interesting. So I was looking at the length of one of the longest graphics cards, or certainly deepest that I know, which is the Palette GameRock RTX 4090, which is what we've got in here now. We've also got the MSI B760 Gaming Plus Wi-Fi over here, so a MICRO-ATX board along with 32GB of memory, and all of this hardware is linked to in the description down below. Now, the really, really interesting thing is if I reach around here and get my monster power supply, which is the MSI MEG AI 1300P, which has the native PCI Express 5 connector for NVIDIA's latest graphics cards, as you can see down there. So we just need a single cable going over to the graphics card. If you put this thing in the front, there is actually clearance, if I get the cables out of the way, that is, to mount this thing, and it fits. Look at that. It actually fits with like 8mm to spare, which means that we can drop that power supply down and we can actually have a 360mm AIO liquid cooler in the roof. So that is absolutely stonking news. So as long as your graphics card is shorter than this one, and I'm just going to have a look at my phone here just to see what length this is. So the GameRock is 329mm. So you could probably go up to about 332 without it being too much of a problem. Maybe 333 at a push, but that is absolutely awesome. So super good use of space here, and this power supply is full ATX, and it's not one of the short models. A longer one, I probably wouldn't want to have that in there, because you're not going to be able to bend the cables around. Even here like this, it's going to be a bit of a job routing those neatly into the case, but we can hopefully come up with something in a minute. And deciding what cooler to use as well. I'm tempted to try both a large air cooler and a liquid cooler in here. Definitely going to try the liquid cooler because I've just opened up this massive load of space here. But what about that? One of the biggest graphics cards out there right now, and it fits in here even with an ATX power supply in the front, in the worst possible position for this power supply in this case, pretty much. So in terms of GPU length, so absolutely awesome find here. So here we are with the Dan Case A3 MICRO-ATX then. We're nearly built. We've got our graphics card in, the power supply is now in, motherboard, memory, SSD, and we've also added a Be Quiet Silent Wings 4 Pro fan in the rear, I believe, and we've also got our power supply in now. So the one thing I will mention is I had to drop the power supply down another notch. There was enough clearance up here, I'm thinking, what, the second notch down where I was, to fit a radiator and fans, but I wanted to have the cooler mounted this way around, and we obviously had to route the tubing underneath those things. So dropping the power supply down another notch, absolutely fine, still got plenty of clearance under here for the cables, but it does allow us to have the tubing ports up this end, which means that the actual pump section can then fit nicely over like that. So we need to deal with all of this spaghetti now, but just wanted to mention that the 360mm all-in-one liquid cooler is the MSI MAG Core Liquid E360, just a fairly standard 360mm liquid cooler. Obviously we're going to need that for our Core i9 4900K that we've got in here at the moment. So a very, very easy to build, and just fits in all the hardware that you need for a high-end PC, namely 360mm radiator, powerful ATX power supply. You can obviously go smaller on the power supply to give yourself a bit of extra space, but really you don't need to do that unless you're really pushing the limits and you want to fill it with all the storage that you possibly can and all that kind of stuff. Really, I think I would probably just stick with M.2 SSDs, or at the very most, I might go for a slightly thinner graphics card and have a hard disk under here or something like that. So anyway, we can crack on to the cooling performance not before having a look at some eye candy, and then we can come to some conclusions in just a minute. Here we are with the completed system then, and I just wanted to run through a few things I love and a few things that I hate about the Dan Case A3 MICRO-ATX. So I love the complete mesh design. I know there's a glass panel available as well, but I just love the fact that this thing is geared towards either negative airflow or air pressure, or positive air pressure. We've got a lot of negative air pressure going on in here, but it's pretty sealed and fully protected against dust. I also love the fact that the front panel down here, so if you've got your PC on the desk, which you probably will do given that you're looking to downsize your full-size MICRO-ATX rig to something smaller like this, just helps having the ports and buttons on the front rather than on the top of the case. Another thing I love, if we just open everything up, is the adjustable power supply mount as well. So this thing can move up or down, which allows you to swap and change different bits of hardware, allowing for greater water cooling support or better air cooling support, or a mixture of the two. Some things that we don't like about the case now then, and first and foremost is this side panel. So if we put it on as we showed earlier, some of the corners do rattle. So the first thing that I would be doing is wrapping that little metal flange down at the bottom here in some duct tape or something, just to kind of squidge it into that little mount down there, or just adding maybe like go with a glue gun or something like that, just to create a smaller hole and some noise vibration. Bit of a shame, because otherwise the build quality is pretty good, despite the fact it's a very, very cheap case. Another thing I'm not massively keen on is if we remove the roof, the radiator mount up here is not removable. That just makes things a little bit tricky when it comes to installing your radiator, and I definitely found that to be the case when installing this 360mm radiator in the roof. Now, obviously, we've got our graphics card in a standard horizontal mode here. The case does support vertical GPU mounts, and with some extra components that are fairly cheap, you can achieve that. It would have just been nice to have had that option included in the box, but I can appreciate that LIAN and Dan Case just kind of wanted to keep the price to an absolute minimum, but it's just a pain that you have to order in extra components in order to do that. Moving on to the thermal results now then, and I've managed to amalgamate a lot of the data into a single graph for the simple reason that the CPU temperature, which was tested with the mesh panel and the glass panel window for the DAN case A3 MICRO-ATX that LIAN sent over, was exactly the same between the two windows. And I didn't actually think that would be the case. I thought that the the glass panel window would actually hamper airflow to the all-in-one liquid cooler in the roof. But the fact that the far side panel is also mesh, plus the mesh or very open, very vented bottom of the case, that just meant that that liquid cooler in the top was able to still draw enough air in to keep the CPU at a pretty much exactly the same temperature. So that's kind of interesting, and that should hopefully replicate itself whether you go for custom liquid cooling or with a large air cooler or something like that as well. So hopefully you'll see the same results as me here, that the CPU temperature isn't really affected by moving from the mesh panel to the glass window, which I do prefer the glass window, to be honest, because it just kind of gives you a view into a very unique case, especially if you've got some shiny hardware inside as well. So the GPU temperature, though, massively affected by the use of the glass window, and this is kind of the opposite way around to how I thought it would be, because the graphics card is basically pointing at the bottom of the case, which is well ventilated, and it's able to draw in enough air. But what isn't happening is that graphics card being able to expel the air through its side vents. Now, it's got lots and lots of side vents, the Palette Game Rock RTX 4090, and it was clearly relying on that vented panel to get rid of a lot of that hot exhaust air. It's not able to do that with the glass window slap bang against the side of the graphics card. So that is, I'm assuming, is the only thing the only explanation here, because everything else is exactly the same. I haven't added or subtracted any fans. The PC was in exactly the same position. It was the same ambient temperature. Everything was the same except the mesh panel, and these tests were done within 10 minutes of each other. So just be aware that if you're using a large graphics card and it does expel air out the side towards the side panel, that you're probably going to see fairly high or higher GPU thermals by using the glass panel window compared to the mesh. So what do we make of the LIAN DAN case A3 MICRO-ATX then? Well, I really like this case, and not just because it only costs 70 bucks. It's a great blank canvas that you can do all sorts of things with, whether it comes to custom liquid cooling, or you want to fit a very large AIO liquid cooler like we have done here, or you want to go for an air-cooled PC, because with 165 millimeters of CPU clearance, you've got plenty of scope in this case for actually housing a very large air cooler as well. So plenty of room for very large graphics cards, as long as they're not too long. I think if they're longer than sort of 320, 330 millimeters, then you might start to have problems if you're using an ATX power supply as well, or you'll want to make use of the roof with a radiator and fans. But as we saw here, it is possible to fit a large radiator in the roof with a single row of fans, have a large ATX power supply and a very large graphics cards. You just need to be aware of the limitations there. But overall, it's a good package. It's not without its flaws. Slightly rattly panel, which is easily fixed. The cable routing options are, I wouldn't say non-existent, because there are some places where you can kind of hide them. And to be honest, in a case like this, you want to keep cables to a minimum anyway. Would highly recommend the proper PCI Express 5 connector for your NVIDIA graphics card. If it uses one, just makes your life a whole lot easier in this case. And other than that, there isn't really too many bad things to say about it. The cooling is pretty awesome. Beware of the glass side panel, especially if you have a graphics card that is venting to the side like this, because it seems to really impact thermals. Not catastrophically, but it saw our GPU temperature rise from a very respectable 50 degrees in games to around to sort of the mid-60s or low to mid-60s. So definite impact there, even if it didn't, surprisingly, impact on the processor temperature. So yeah, it's a very affordable case, a great thing to kind of turn heads, and just something different. If you don't want to go for mini-ITX, that's offering too many limitations for you, and you just want something that's a bit smaller than your typical ATX system, then I think the DAN case A3 MICRO-ATX has done a pretty good job of being very versatile with its flexible PSU mount, and also adaptable whether you want to go air cooling, custom liquid cooling, or with an AIO liquid cooler. So thanks to LIAN for sending this case over, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Liking and commenting, particularly important just to punch me through the algorithm, and your subscription is always appreciated. And likewise, if you felt that the video today was informative and you want to help out a budding YouTuber, then you can always send your thanks using various links down below as well. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will be back very soon.